Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for being a part of this historic opportunity for us to share the power of testimony and the power of healing and the power of forgiveness. My name is Alan Parker. I am the president of the Justice Foundation, and I am very, very honored to be here with you today. Today, you're going to hear the power of testimony from women and men who've experienced abortions. And I want you to know that the power of testimony has the power to change the world. And I deeply appreciate all of these courageous women who will be speaking to us. Operation Outcry started about 13 years ago when the Lord told us to begin to collect the testimony of women who've been hurt by abortion. I have the great honor of representing thousands and thousands of women who've been hurt by abortion. And instead of being helped by it, it was a doorway to pain and suffering in their lives. And you'll hear about that story tonight. We are very honored to have each of these women giving their testimonies tonight. And next I want to introduce Cindy Collins, co-host of Faces of Abortion and the global coordinator for Operation Outcry.
Thank you, Alan. It's an honor to be here tonight and to be at this very sacred moment, and I believe a historic moment in our nation. Each one of these stories we find in Operation Outcry is also almost offered up as an offering to the Lord. It's just a special treasure because it's been held in the secret place for many years by many women. And as they boldly and courageously share their story, it takes a lot of courage. And as they're doing that, they know that that story will often set another woman free. It's by that power of the testimony. The Word of God says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb, the word of our testimony, and we love not our lives even unto death in Revelation 12:11. And I know as a woman who has also gone through abortion and multiple abortions and has traveled around the nation in my home state of Louisiana and also around the world with Operation Outcry, that the pain of abortion touches a woman's heart all around the world, and she's often never the same. So with that, it's an honor to be here tonight. And we want to go ahead and also include our website, which is operationoutcry.org, for those that may be watching this taping. But now I'd like to introduce and have the honor of introducing my colleague, Myra Myers, who is hosting this tonight of this very powerful time. Myra?
My name is Myra, and I'm so glad to be here. Welcome to Healing Wounded Hearts. I'm so thankful you are here. You and I are here on purpose. No one is here by mistake. No one is here by accident. Everyone has been conceived on purpose. No one is conceived by accident. No one is conceived. No one is a mistake. Because Jesus says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. You were in my care before you were born. So sadly, each of us went astray, turning each one her own way. But amazingly, Jesus says, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness, I have drawn you. We will be hearing true stories. Hear our true stories of pain, regret. Listen to our true stories of forgiveness, hope, healing, freedom.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn, and this is my story. 31 years ago, I made a devastating decision that I would regret for the rest of my life. At the age of 25, I chose to have an abortion. And at that time, I was happily married, had a beautiful 5-year-old daughter, and really wanted nothing more than to have another child. So I was delighted to find out that I was pregnant. However, when I found out that my baby might be less than perfect, or my pregnancy might have complications, I panicked. My doctor advised me to terminate my pregnancy as soon as possible. So, motivated by fear and sad and disappointed, I aborted my baby the very next day. I was told that the abortion wouldn't affect me in any way, and so I believed that I was going to find peace and relief from this experience, but I was very wrong. What did happen was I was filled with shame and guilt, and I carried that into a life filled with depression and incredible anxiety and much anger. On the outside, I had it put together, but on the inside, I was dying. Well, in the midst of those dark years, I faced another abortion experience. This one was not my own, but my daughter was now a sweet young teenager, and at a time in her life when she needed me the most, I wasn't there for her. I neglected her. And searching for love, she found herself pregnant. And again, disappointed and sad. Somehow I thought it was the thing to do. I drove her to the clinic, and I paid for her abortion 10 years after my own. And I thought I could just bury that secret right along with my own shame and guilt and never, ever speak of it. And I didn't for a long time, and I began a new normal, and you get on with your life, and I didn't even realize how much the abortions had affected me, but it affected every part of my life. And so I'm wallowing in this agony and not even knowing it. But God had a sovereign plan, and He knew that I was. And when I was least expecting it, something really wonderful happened. I'd been in church all my life and knew who Jesus was, but I realized at the age of 43 that I had never really surrendered my life to Christ, and I had never really committed to Him as in becoming a Christian. So I did that, and as you might know, it was a very joyful season in my life. I was filled with so much joy, but at the same time, it was very challenging because the memories of my abortion surfaced like never before, and it haunted me. I couldn't get it out of my mind, and it just plagued me. God knew that too. So in the midst of that time, He brought a couple of friends into my life that I connected with, and amazingly, for some reason, I shared my secret that I had never told anybody. And I thought, well, I've shared that secret, and that's enough. I don't have to tell anybody else now. But as it turned out, they actually were post-abortive too. And more than that, they knew about the healing that was available for me if I was willing to reach for it. And they encouraged me to go on a healing journey with them, to do this Bible study. Well, I was reluctant, didn't want to do it, and thought, I don't need that. But eventually I did, and I have to tell you, it was the best thing I ever did in my life. For the first time, I found peace and joy, and I found forgiveness that only Jesus Christ can give. It was totally awesome. But if that weren't enough, I also found purpose. And I knew then that God wanted me to take this healing journey to other women. And one woman in particular was my daughter. I knew she suffered with the same pain, and so I prayed that God would reach her. Well, since that time, my daughter has been healed, and God has answered those prayers. We are a mother-daughter team, and we work together to reach other women. So I said at the beginning that I will always regret my decision, and I do regret it, but God in His amazing glory can turn bad things into good, and He's done that. He's turned my sadness into joy. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Stacy. Well, my perfect world wasn't really so perfect. Good grades and loving and supportive parents. athletic talents, all that looked good on the outside, but on the inside, I was alone. I was longing for love and acceptance, and I was an insecure teenager. And an innocent relationship turned sexual. And the next thing I knew, I was 16 and pregnant. And the idea of people finding out that I had sex before marriage seemed unbearable. But the idea of having a baby my senior year of high school was unimaginable. So I told my parents that I needed their help. And I said, I'm in this predicament, and I need you to help me get out of it. And in my mind, abortion was the only answer. I thought that having a baby was going to shatter my dreams. But little did I know that having an abortion was going to shatter my life. Immediately following my abortion, I built a wall around my heart, and I was filled with anger and a deep rage that I really can't even describe. I went on looking like a typical teenager, but on the outside, I made rules for myself, and actually mediocrity was failure. I put perfection as a must, and I was determined to excel in every area of my life as possible. And in some twisted way, I thought that by being perfect, I could make up for the decision to abort my baby. And we did go on. We didn't talk about it for years and years and years. We didn't, and I continued to stuff it down throughout high school and college. And about 7 years after my abortion, I actually met my husband. And while I knew God, and actually had a fear of God all of my life, I didn't know anything really about Jesus. And my husband first told me about Jesus and how he died on the cross to forgive us of our sins. And for the first time ever, I realized that I was forgiven of the sin of abortion, and I accepted Jesus as Lord and Savior of my life. But as a new Christian, I continued in this performance-driven lifestyle, and now I was failing as a Christian. I couldn't be good enough, and now the guilt and the shame of my abortion experience was surfacing so much I was choking on it. And actually, it was a time in my life that I was depressed and even thoughts of suicide. I hated myself. I hated myself for what I did in the past. And even though I knew I was forgiven in my head, I didn't experience it in my heart. So I was failing as a mother. I had a beautiful 3-year-old daughter, and I was failing as a wife, and my life was a mess. But as God would have it, my mom had been praying for me all those years, and actually my husband and I had joined a new church, and I met a friend who invited me to coffee. And never having shared my abortion experience with anyone, over coffee that day, I felt the thumping in my heart, and I knew I had to tell her. And I did. I shared my story with her, and coincidentally, she too had had an abortion, and she was getting ready to start a post-abortive Bible study with some other women, and she said, "You're going to come with me. I need you to come with me." And of course, I didn't really think I needed it. I was kind of going kicking and screaming because I still didn't really realize that the pain and the suffering and the dysfunction in my life was directly related to my abortion. But in just a matter of weeks, a few weeks, my world completely changed. And God showed me, he started putting the pieces back together. And I experienced his forgiveness, and I actually accepted it. I accepted his forgiveness for the very first time. And I experienced his redemptive power in my life. And I can actually say I became whole again. And it's through my journey to freedom that God's now equipped me to help other women and to work together with my mother to see other women healed from the destruction of abortion in their life. So, thank you.
My name is Sarah. I had my abortion when I was 19. I was dating a wonderful guy who's now my husband. I was a Christian, but I wasn't acting like it. And when I found out I was pregnant, my consuming thought was, I have to hide this so that no one can ever find out. I convinced myself that I just didn't have any other choice. I went to the campus doctor, and I was really surprised because they asked me, do you plan to carry or do you plan to terminate your pregnancy? I thought that was such a nice way to put it. It was just a simple medical procedure. They gave me a list of 10 to 12 doctors who could perform an abortion, and it just made it just so easy for me. It helped me justify that decision in my head. God might not think it's okay, but it seems like a lot of people do. So I really decided that I could get away with it and move on. When I went to the clinic, they made the abortion procedure just sound really easy. They said it'll be over in a matter of minutes. What a joke. You can't go into a place like that and come out the same person. You go in the front door. It's just such symbolism there, because at the clinic you go in the front, and when they're done with you, they push you out the back so that no one can see you when they're coming in. I did find relief, though. After it was over, I thought no one will ever know, and I can move on with my life. But I wasn't the same. I wasn't the same at all. I tried very hard to keep up appearances. So I don't think those that weren't really close to me knew, but I had started to become really withdrawn from my friends, and I didn't have the same interests anymore. I really did hate myself. And I told myself that God didn't love me anymore, and I blamed him. I just tried not to think about him. I had that deep, dark secret, and I knew that I would carry it to my grave. And what I didn't realize were there a lot of other women around me who were post-abortive, and they were feeling the exact same thing. They were having the guilt and the shame and the self-condemnation. I just didn't realize it at the time. So at that point, things were getting pretty bad, and I was now married to the guy, and I'm totally sure that we would have divorced. We were really on that path. I'd harbored a lot of anger and resentment toward him because it didn't seem to bother him. He was fine. He wasn't struggling like I was, and I think that I just really wanted him to hurt too. Well, we started going to church, and I found out about a crisis pregnancy center called Real Options for Women, and I found out that they needed volunteers. So I went to their volunteer training, and my intention was to help women. Little did I know that God had other things for me, a whole healing journey to take place. There was a woman who got up, and she said, I am post-abortive, I've had an abortion, and statistically speaking, at least 3 other women in this room have too. I was completely shocked. How could somebody stand up in front of a group and say that they'd had an abortion? I mean, it completely floored me. But I did hear what she said, and it's at that point I realized that I was not alone. Well, that day obviously changed my life. I found out about Forgiven and Set Free, a Bible study that women who have had abortions can go through, and I went through it, and God healed my heart. He forgave me. I found out that he had forgiven me the first time that I'd asked. It was just me that needed to accept it. So the girl who was never going to tell a soul she had had an abortion is standing here telling you about her experience. And I no longer have the guilt and shame. I'm forgiven. And only God can do that. Only God can do that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tina, and I was 15 years old when I was engaging in sexual activity, because at 15 we know everything. And I thought, even though teen pregnancy in the mid-'80s was very rampant and was not unfamiliar to me. I had a friend at 13 who was pregnant. I used to judge her like, how can she do that? And I just never thought it would happen to me. And even when it did, I still denied it. My mother, which has mother's instincts, will notice differences in how I was acting. Morning sickness I couldn't hide, evening sickness I couldn't hide. I still denied it. And then when she told me she told me I was going to have an abortion. I didn't believe her. I've tried to seek friends to tell me something. I wanted to run away. I was too afraid. I was already too afraid of what I did. And I felt ashamed. Of course, I let my mom down, let myself down, and now I'm just like everybody else in the neighborhood, from the neighborhood I lived in at the time. But still, I didn't want the abortion. And I begged my mom, and I begged her, but she told me everything would go back to the same. And it would save her reputation, save my reputation, which already was going down the drain anyway, and keep us from being in a statistic of teenage pregnancy. However, she thought it was going to be an easy answer, an easy way out. And after she convinced me that that was the only way out, that's what I did. Well, one, we used a different name, paid cash, didn't use my name, we used another name. So that already was a red flag saying that this was not okay for either of us. So that was a lie that I believed, though. Afterwards, I experienced many things that a lot of women experience, or girls. Promiscuity, drugs, alcohol, depression, shame. I couldn't let myself get over that fact. So I just told myself, when I engaged in things that were dangerous and that weren't right for me, I just told myself, I've done worse. So this is nothing. So everything I did was based on that one event. There's not many things in this world or dates in my life that I can remember. I can remember my birthday. I can remember my wedding date, the dates that my parents passed. But this date, out of all dates, trumps all those dates, even the good dates. So it never goes. That's 27 years ago. Every year, I was 11 weeks pregnant when I had the abortion. So every year, I counted down how many weeks afterwards I would have had the baby if I went full term. Every year, when I think that baby should have been born, I think about the baby, what it would look like, when it would have graduated, if I would have grandkids by now. Every year on the date that I had the abortion, I feel like the whole world's coming down on me. Even when I forget what the date is, if I had a bad event happen on that day or something's going wrong, when I hear what day it is, I was like, that's why. I blame it all on that date. My mom, neither one of us had Christ in our life at the time. My dad didn't know until later on. He was upset. Anyways, it's just something that you carry with you. I'm ashamed of. I've never spoken to more than one or two people at a time about. It's still very difficult. And it's still very painful because I'm in my 40s, I still don't have children, and I've been happily married for 15 years. So I feel a great deal of guilt because I'm not able to provide a family for my husband, who, by the way, when I told him, gave me the most encouraging reaction that I've ever had, because I've shared with people before and got very judgmental looks. So I've always been shy and apprehensive about sharing with people. If I could, I would tell everyone to seek more counseling for your child, because one thing my mom said before she passed, when she talked about it, was, I did not know what it was going to do to you. And she didn't know, and I didn't know. But I want everyone else to know that this is not an answer. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shelley. My abortion experience was back in February of 1998. And I was married. I was actually going through a separation. And I was unemployed at the time. I dropped out of college. It was the worst time to even become pregnant. And I remember when I found out that it flashed before my eyes that my husband and I could get back together and start a family. abortion was never an option. It just never came across. And I remember making the phone call, and that was the first thing he said, that that was the only option that we had. And I was very naive. I did not know much about a fetus or a baby or pregnancy or any of that. And he told me that I was still early on in my pregnancy and that it was not a baby yet. It was just tissue. He also told me it was legal. And because since it's legal, I mean, isn't it okay? That's what went through my mind. Why would something wrong be legal? So he convinced me that abortion was my only option. So I went through the procedure. I agreed only if I was put to sleep. So I was put to sleep, and I remember the moment I woke up, I was hysterical. And it's like all my questions were answered at that moment. And I just remember looking to the left of me, and there's just rows of other women recovering. And I could barely breathe. And just the thought of what just happened and what I just did. And the nurse took me out to the alley to see my husband at the time. And he saw me, and he asked the nurse what was wrong with me. Why was I so upset? And she was like, "Oh, she's okay. She'll get better." So on the way home, I was just devastated. I was hysterical. And I'll never forget, I looked at him and he looked at me and he said, "I think we made a mistake."